Hey, Lauren here. Let's talk about government propaganda.
And then put them in jail.
America has a growing army of right-wing social media superstars,
Ukraine is the enemy of this country.
echoing Putin's worldview,
It's so dumb.
excavating division,
People are at a boiling point.
trumpeting Trump.
When Donald Trump wins,
A former alt-right YouTuber tells us
The Russians want us to undermine every single thing around us.
Taylor Hansen here with Tenet Media. We are at 3 a.m.
the US Department of Justice is going after the companies who hired these millennial influencers. A series of law enforcement indictments says that some of them were funded by Russia, many times without even knowing. The legal action has lifted the lid on Moscow's disinformation war in the West. So, let's break it down. First up, the US Department of Justice indictment. Its focus an alleged illegal money trail which it says connects alt-right influencers to Vladimir Putin. It's all part of a broader operation by US law enforcement to clamp down on a Russian campaign to influence the American presidential election in November. The devil, though, is in the detail of the federal indictment. It's issued against two Russian media executives in Moscow and brings the reader on quite the ride. Here is the gist of it. The indictment alleges that two people working for Putin's favorite media outlet in Moscow, RT, formerly known as Russia Today, funneled around $10 million to a Tennessee-based company exactly matching the description of Tenet Media. It was founded by right-wing YouTuber Lauren Chen and her husband Liam Donovan. The company then distributed the money to its stable of content creators. The influencers on Tenet's books include Tim Pool, Lauren Southern, Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson. Let's start though with Lauren Chen.
All right, how you guys doing tonight? You good? Yeah.
She is definitely Canadian, a less convincing stand-up
So
comic.
awesome. You guys, you clean up amazing, okay? You barely even look homeless. It's just good for you.
So, I am Lauren Chen. I am a blue.
She made her name as a right-wing YouTuber though, had millions of followers before YouTube took down her channel last week after the Ministry of Justice indictment. 6 years ago, she was at this far-right rally in London. I was there too, to meet Caelan Robertson. He was once part of the alt-right media sphere himself, but has done a complete volte-face, is now a journalist in Ukraine where he spoke to me. Back in the day, though, Lauren Chen was a familiar face in his circles.
I first met Lauren Chen in 2018. She was at a rally organized by Tommy Robinson. That rally was covered really heavily by Russia Today. And back then, she was growing her online presence. Her contact book was very vast. She basically has the phone numbers of most of the hugely influential right-wing figures in North America and in Europe. She's worked with almost all of them. And I think that's probably why the Russians looked to her to set up Tenet, because she could recruit some of the biggest personalities for that network.
We
As
could
married
pull it up.
women,
We could pull it up.
So, Lauren Chen is part of the same alt-right media ecosystem as Tommy Robinson.
British guys here, but we have Tommy Robinson joining us. So we'll start with Tommy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi.
Real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, the UK-based far-right agitator. And there are more recent examples of cooperation. Take Southport.
People are at a boiling point, and understandably so. Crowds are gathering in Southport, people filled with rage.
American influencers jumped on this story, fanning the flames of the riots that took place on UK soil, as many on the right
These are the
wrongly
faces.
blamed a Muslim asylum seeker for the murders of 3 children.
Britain, like most of the West, is a broken country. The police say this was a non-terror incident. When a failed
Remember, the DOJ indictment says that nearly $10 million was funneled by the Russians to Chen's Tenet Media in Nashville. The undeclared funds were transferred through a network of shell companies in countries like the UK and the UAE, and ended up in the pockets of the company's stable of influencers. They, in turn, were paid up to $100,000 per YouTube episode. The indictment says that although the founders of Tenet knew where the money was coming from, the influencers at the end of the chain did not. One of them, Tim Pool, responded to the indictment.
Did you read the indictment? It clearly says that I, as well as the other personalities, were victims. We were deceived by people intentionally to trick us into licensing our content to them.
The other influencers in this report made the same claims, that they did not know where the money originated. As well as the likes of Tim Pool and Lauren Southern, people like Taylor Hanson were also on Tenet's books.
So you have an absolutely massive group crossing right now.
Here he is reporting on migrants arriving into the US.
Obviously, mostly fighting age men.
You speak English.
Including one person who seems to see through the agenda. The influencers allegedly receiving Russian money say they are editorially independent. But the indictment does give a number of examples of how content was shaped by Moscow. Take the Crocus Hall terrorist attack in Moscow back in March. Islamic State claimed responsibility, but Putin quickly blamed Ukraine. At the time, Russian handlers told the Tenet executives to blame Ukraine and the United States, writing, "I think we can focus on the Ukraine-US angle." The executives spoke to one of their influencers, who was not named, and the next day it was confirmed he's happy to cover it. We've asked Tenet for a response, but haven't received one. Now, according to the indictment, part of the point of all of this was also to consolidate support for another Trump presidency. He was asked about the indictment, dismissed it as a scam.
Thank you very much, everybody. Now I understand yesterday they're bringing up Russia again, that they've done for years. Never found anything. But they should be looking at China. Iran, lots of other places. I haven't spoken to anybody from Russia in years.
According to US law enforcement, though, this is bigger than a handful of influencers on the books of a company in Nashville. A recent unsealed FBI affidavit suggests that they are legion. The affidavit names the Russian social design agency company, which operates under the auspices of Vladimir Putin. The FBI says the Russian company has a list of more than 2,800 people on various social media platforms spanning 81 countries. It goes on to say that the US-based influencers account for approximately 21%. So that's 600 influencers in the States alone who are either sympathetic to the Russian worldview or are working with them.
People on social media have...
For their millions of followers, Chen, Pool and Southern are the influencers, sticking it to the mainstream media, contrary, independent. These indictments, though, call into question how independent. For their detractors, they're the effluencers, spewing out hate, not that bothered about where the money comes from, as they cash in on the culture wars.
So, see you guys next time.